We are brought to you by Boss Bears Supplements. That's Boss Bears Supplements at bossbears.co. Hard work, consistency, and determination are difficult to sustain when your mind and body can't keep up. Fuel your body with what it needs to perform like a boss. Whether you're closing deals, pitching a new business idea, or training in the gym, Boss Bears take your hustle to the next level. Our ingredients are the highest quality with potency and serving sizes that are the gold standard in the industry. Check out all of Boss Bears products at bossbears.co. They have apple cider vinegar gummies. They have ashwagandha. They have all kinds of supplements in delicious gummy form. They also have them in pill form if you don't want the gummies. I prefer the gummies. They are delicious, and I've tried the apple cider vinegar. They are very good. Use code Nicky at checkout to save 10%. That's bossbears.co, code Nicky. We are brought to you by Clout Power Supplements. That's KLOUTPWR.com. So here I have the protein, the Cravings protein from Clout. This one is the salted caramel. This is some of the best protein that I've ever had in my life. It's actually delicious. I like the salted caramel and the cinnamon swirl are my two favorites. Also, their pre-workouts are amazing. So they have the Karma Nootropic pre-workout. It's a nootropic and focused pre-workout. It's a lower stimulant formula, zero itch formula. It has 4 trademark ingredients, and has fully dosed ingredients. So far, the Arctic Cherry is probably my favorite of the Karma pre-workout. Also, try the Nero Aminos from them. And also the High Stimulant Mamba is some of my favorite too. And I really like the Arctic Cherry of that one. So go to cloutpower.com and use code Nicky to save 15%. KLOUTPWR.com. Code Nicky to save 15%. Okay, everybody, welcome to the Nicky Free Podcast. We are here with Dr. Bryan McIntosh, and you are a plastic surgeon in Bellevue and Kirkland.
Correct.
So how are you doing today, man?
I'm doing well.
That's good. That's good.
Yeah.
So let's talk a little bit about your profession. So, plastic surgeon. And so how did you... was that something you originally wanted to get into, or did this just kind of happen?
It's a long path.
Yeah. Let's hear the beginning. How it.
The very beginning. My first mention in my life of plastic surgery was a family at church. The son had some injury, and he had a plastic surgeon do plastic surgery, and I was probably 8, and I remember my mom telling us about this, and she's like, yeah, they actually poured molten plastic into his face to like fix up the scars.
That's what your mom thought plastic surgery
That's
was.
what she told us. I was like, whoa, that's wild. And I didn't really think of, when you're young and you're 5, you're going to be an astronaut or a fireman or who knows what.
Something like that, or a Ninja Turtle, whatever.
Turtle,
yeah.
So president, no, I don't know what I was thinking when I was that young. But when I got to junior high, we had a career day, and this is after the plastic surgery, being poured into his face.
Yeah.
We had a career day, and so I went to a chef, I went to a journalist, and I went to a doctor, and those rooms, and the doctor turned me off, honestly.
Right.
He was like, after high school, it's 8 years more.
It seemed like a very daunting,
I'm like, I can't do 8 years.
So were you someone that enjoyed school?
That wasn't even accurate, though. It was way longer than 8 years.
Yeah.
I did enjoy school. I liked learning. I excelled. I got good grades. My brother and I both. My sister, she struggled a little bit.
Yeah.
She's more of a socialite, but I liked it.
It was just the idea of 8 years is a long time, right?
8 years seemed like an eternity. When you're in junior high,
right?
You can't do 8 more years. It's like, I'm looking forward to, just a couple more years of high school, and then who knows what.
Then go be an astronaut.
Yeah. And yeah, so I
So
went
then,
to college. Oh, go
right.
ahead.
No, I was gonna say. So yeah, then what did you end up originally going to college for?
I took one of these computerized tests to tell me what my career should be
Right.
based on my interests. And, I can't tell you how easy it is to just cheat on that and make it tell you whatever you want to do. But I was going to be a chemical engineer at that point.
Okay. Was that something that actually interested you?
I didn't even know what it was.
Right. It's just what this
I
test told you.
didn't even know what it was. So
Did
I
you
was
ever
like,
take one of those personality tests that tells you what is it, the Myers-Briggs or any of that tells you like INFP, ENFP, like
I have. I
which
don't
you
remember
don't
the
remember?
details of those things.
Yeah.
It'd be interesting to do it again.
It would because I think they kind of change over the years too, I feel like.
I think it would.
Yeah.
I think it
But
would.
so this test told you that you were supposed to be a chemical engineer.
Mm-hmm.
So what did you do? What was your next step?
Next step was apply to college, get into college. I was in an engineering, chemical engineering program, I believe,
Yeah.
at SPU.
Okay.
So I went to Seattle Pacific University, class of, my first year was 1992. That's how old I am.
Yeah.
And
Well, at least you
I-
look young. Don't worry. Yeah.
yeah, I know. I went to live there, and I'm only 45 minutes away from where my parents live and where I grew up. Right, so
Okay.
it was my first week away. I don't know anyone, and I'm such a tender homebody, like
So it was
little,
kind of
little gentle soul. It was a shock.
Yeah.
And I remember calling my parents literally in tears from Seattle saying, if we get out now, we can get all our money back. And my parents are like, Bryan, just relax.
You wanted to quit right away. Yeah.
I was in science
natural, I
classes.
think.
I was in these engineering things. Maybe it's natural. I don't know.
Yeah.
But it was, those were not the classes for me. So
Well, I think that's resistance right away. It's something new, so I think we deal with that.
it was new. It was really different for me.
It's like take it all back. I'll just come home.
Take it all back. Let's get all your money back. And
Like I don't want to waste your money.
Yeah.
Let's not do
It
this.
was expensive.
Oh,
Back
yeah.
then, tuition was $12,500. That seems like nothing now, but
Oh, that seems so cheap now.
it was really expensive in the 90s. Let's
Right.
put it that way for kind of a
Chemical
middle class
engineering.
family. Yeah.
Oh, right. So middle class upbringing. Yeah.
We didn't have money. We didn't have health insurance growing up, You just
We'll
went
have
to
to
the
talk
doctor when
about
you were
that later
dying.
because that's interesting.
Yeah.
Middle class now doing what you do, which is something that's in a different. Not a lot of middle class people are out getting plastic surgery. Maybe now though, you'll probably talk about that. It's probably more affordable in some.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Definitely.
But anyway, so you go to college, you call them, and you're like, I can't do this. Take your money back.
Get me out. Take me home.
Yeah.
So I met with a career guidance counselor or whatever at the school, and she's like, let's just change your classes.
Mm-hmm.
So I changed all of them to just the core curriculum, basic classes, the types of classes that everyone has to do to just get
That
a
way you
degree.
could get an idea along the way what you want to do. Okay.
So I took required classes for the first year and kind of learned at the end of that where I thought I might want to go. But I also learned a little bit about medical school. And to get into medical school, you can have any bachelor's degree. Didn't have to be chemistry or biology, although that's what most people get
Yeah.
and then go into to med school. So once I realized that, I was like, okay, so I don't have to take all those sciencey classes that really turned me off in my
Right.
first week and made me want to quit and
Yeah.
go home crying. And I realized, okay, I'm gonna do something really that interests me, that fulfills that requirement to get a bachelor's degree.
Yeah.
And then I think I want to go to med school, but I'm not really sure at this point.
What do you think kind of planted the med school seed? It was just the idea of like.
It was the idea that I don't think an undergraduate degree is enough for me.
Yeah.
And
You
I
had some
liked-
ambition.
Yeah, but I didn't really know, and I didn't really know that I could do it.
Right.
I could barely make it through the first week in college. Like, what's going to happen after that?
Yeah.
So once I made it through a year and I'm doing actually okay, I start to investigate med school a little bit more and read a book and, hey, the different pathways that you can go and here's the requirements and this is the cost and your time. And then, by the way, there's residency after that. It's not just 8 years after high school. It's 4 years of college, it's 4 years of med school, and then there's residency to deal with. And, whoa, okay, so now we're even talking more time. Residency is not for the faint of heart. I mean, the guy who's crying the first, I don't know how I made it through.
I was gonna say, so what all is entailed in that?
Well, I went through.
It's like what, ER? No, like,
Yeah, I mean it's a lot. I went through a general surgery residency to start, so that's 5 years.
I was gonna say it's got to be a lot because you think about it. It's like the one profession where your tolerance can't be like. If you're in a factory making a part, there's a certain tolerance. Like surgeons have to be like, there is no like. I mean, I'm sure there's a little tiny little bit, but no, like you have to. You're like stitching people together. There's no room for failure.
Well, not necessarily failure, but I will say the human body is very resilient. So there is a little bit of a fudge factor. So to speak.
It's pretty amazing, isn't it?
Yeah. But yeah, no, I made it through med school. That's truly miraculous too, since I could barely make it through my anyway.
Once you started going, did it just kind of like you just kept putting in time and it just became more and more like you're like, okay, I can do this. Like how long did it take you to kind of build the confidence to see this path as an attainable path for you?
Boy.
Plus you probably were growing
within the first few months.
Yeah.
Because there were people who, this is anatomy class, like if you aren't okay around dead bodies and formaldehyde,
did you guys see
you're not going to make it through med school. This is the first class.
Is there like a lot of like cadaver stuff with surgery where you're using cadavers and everything?
Well, I mean, in med school, that was the first several months.
Right. I was going to say, I only remember that from, so my favorite author growing up was Michael Crichton. Like the dude, he wrote Jurassic Park and like Congo and Disclosure. He actually created ER, the series, but he had I think it was a nonfiction book, and he was also a doctor. So he went into like a lot of that, like him in school and everything. And yeah, that was kind of weird to hear about,
Yeah, it's really awkward. But, I realized, okay, I think I'm going to be okay cutting these dead bodies open and learning the anatomy. And
how do you is there like a way that you just kind of like compartmentalize it or like, because I was going to say so I used to hunt deer, and it's like, that's a weird thing too, because it's like you don't want to kill it, but you want to eat it. So there's a weird feeling with killing an animal too, because you're not like really happy that you're killing it. You're just like, know that it's something that has to be done if you are wanting to eat it. And then, that's the same thing with like cleaning an animal. It's like a weird thing. But once you kind of like, disassociate with the idea, it becomes more of a mechanical process. So you stop thinking of it. It's like the animal's gone. This is the remain. So it's kind of weird. But because I mean, once a human being's out of their body, it's not really them anymore. And for you to learn, that's the only way they do it, right?
You have to. I mean, there's only so much you can learn from a computer and a book.
Right.
So
I wonder how many people couldn't like dissect frogs that later on went on to become doctors. And
one is in this room.
As you, yeah.
Yeah, biology and those kinds of classes in college. I was the lab partner who wanted the other partner to do the dissections. And,
you're like, I'm good.
I'll watch you do it. I don't actually want to touch this.
Yeah. Well, that kind of makes sense because you ended up in kind of an aesthetic practice.
How did I get here? Yeah.
Well, it's like it's a messy thing, but you kind of ended up in something where you're trying to make things more beautiful or aesthetic, so it is kind of like
I'm still cutting and sewing,
but you're still doing a lot of
I'm in there.
You're in there. Yeah. It's probably actually pretty weird what it looks like and then what the final product looks like.
Oh, for sure.
Kind of can be sort of barbaric sometimes, huh?
It's barbaric doing it.
Yeah.
I mean, if you've ever seen videos of liposuction, that looks like one of the most brutal things ever.
Oh man, it is crazy. Like you see it some people's like healing, even if they get something like as simple as a deviated septum or their nose done, and what it looks like, and then what it looks like when it's healed and it's beautiful. It's like, what? How did that happen? Like it's weird. You're right. The body heals. It's crazy.
Yeah. Yeah. It's amazing what we can do.
Okay. So you get into school, you do your residency, and then what happens after that?
Well, so after general surgery residency, general surgery residency, because I'm a plastic surgeon, you can't do plastic surgery unless you do, more than that residency. But I was an intern with one of the chief residents for two of my rotations that year. So basically 6 months. And it's just kind of the luck of the draw. She didn't know me before I started. I didn't know her. And she actually was on a plastic surgery path and had already gotten into her program at UC Irvine. And we're she's finishing up her last year, and I'm starting my first year of residency in Connecticut. And so we're working together for 6 of those months. Somehow we became
So
friends.
you had to move to Connecticut too.
I moved to Connecticut for my 5 years of residency. Yeah. And she hooked me up with some good contacts at the Yale plastic surgery program, and that's how I met some really influential people who were instrumental in getting me into a plastic surgery residency.
Right.
So I finished 5 years of general surgery, went into plastic surgery, and did a burn and wound fellowship as well. And that was all with a program in Long Island, New York. And so that was 3 years that I did. And then after that, I moved back here and started a practice.
Wow. So first Connecticut, then New York
Yeah.
for 3 more years. How was New York?
New York was good. I liked living in both of those places. I liked Long Island better than Connecticut, I will say.
Yeah, I was gonna say, so like from going from a kid who was like scared to even like move just a little bit away from your home because you're still here, going to school, calling your parents, and then moving twice and moving one time to a place like New York, that had to really change your perspective, and probably a lot of growth in that as a person, right? I mean,
the initial growth was just moving to Seattle, right? From
Yeah.
Snohomish. Like, that's a big thing. But
even that's a big thing.
for me,
Yeah.
that was big,
Yeah.
I was always a family kind of person, around the family. I wasn't, I never had
The
a curfew
crazy
because
big
I wasn't a
city.
crazy kind of guy out all the time. I was with the family.
Yeah.
And anyway. But yeah, when they dropped me off, actually I went to med school in St. Louis at St. Louis University. And my parents, or my dad dropped me off, and then he had to leave. So I was like, okay.
You're like, I'm here alone.
Bye. I don't
So
know
are
anyone.
you kind of a family type oriented person? Like,
I'm more of a homebody, yeah.
yeah. I mean, yeah, as far as, now that I'm older, like going out, like the idea of like going out in Seattle and stuff sounds a little wild, a little
Yeah.
crazy.
Yeah.
Maybe, I don't know. But yeah, so how, like New York must have been pretty wild.
Well, again, it's
Like
Long
young
Island.
plastic surgeon, like
Yeah.
studying to be a plastic surgeon in New York, like it's like a TV show or something.
Kind of.
Yeah.
There was a lot going on there.
Yeah.
I mean, that's a packed population. There's a lot of poor people, and we part of our training was to work at a university hospital. That's a county hospital, and you get people in there. There's no money. You got to take care of them, and you're it.
Yeah.
And we saw a lot of crazy things,
Oh, I bet.
and it makes you learn a lot in a short period of time. And 8 years of residency seems like a long time. It's a lot packed into that time.
So it's like a lot longer, even seems like.
Yeah.
Like every year is probably long, So it probably shows you a lot about just like the human experience, being around that kind of stuff. Like, just like especially like you said, homeless people or poor people, or like there's some, you get to view a different side of humanity that maybe you didn't know about.
I didn't even know about the concept of a prison ward.
Yeah.
And this hospital has a prison ward, and you would get called sometimes because there was an altercation and someone got, punched, or there's a laceration or whatever.
Someone got shanked.
Or
Yeah.
some people in prison can't walk, and so they're bedbound, and then they develop
Right.
bed sores, and you get
Gotta go
consulted to
take
go
care
see
of them.
those. So yeah.
Wow. So it is a lot of heavy stuff. That's pretty interesting.
Yeah.
So then after New York, you decided to come back here. And what was it about the plastic surgery thing when you met that friend of yours that kind of like you got enticed to like go towards that?
I don't know that it was
Was
necessarily.
it the ability to make money? Did you enjoy something about it? You thought it was like a booming thing, so you're like, no, there's job security.
I mean, the quick answer is, and this is probably the simplest way of answering it, plastic surgery is a combination of art and science.
Right.
And you do have to know the science, which there's a lot of anatomy that you really got to know. Otherwise, things don't heal right, or you
Right.
make the cuts in the wrong places, or, bad scarring or whatnot. But that's the science behind it. And so learning all of that stuff is critical. But the plastic part of it, that's not molten plastic, but that has
Right.
to do with being able to mold and shape things. And,
Yeah.
things that are plastic can be shaped and molded. And so we as plastic surgeons, we like to say, oh, we work on the skin and everything inside of it,
Mm-hmm.
which we do, I
Yeah.
mean, people will get gaping non-healing wounds from a heart surgery and their chest is just open and it won't close, so they'll call the plastic surgeons to move muscles and move skin and
And try to make
close it
it,
up.
yeah. So yeah, because that's the thing. I think there is a stigma sometimes around it, but you do a lot of stuff like that too. That's like, like just something that they really didn't have any choice, but you can help them kind of get some sort of normalcy back after
Yeah,
things like that.
yeah.
Which I'm not, I'm like pro anything that makes people feel good about themselves, kind
Mm-hmm.
of, And I think obviously there's probably people that take it too far and there's crazy stuff. And you probably even have to like, raise those kind of ethical questions. Like if somebody asks you to do too much, I'm sure that's like your choice as a doctor or any of those doctors. Like when people start wanting to turn themselves into like lizard people and
Mm-hmm.
that kind of, it's like, how far do you want to go? But I'm kind of open minded with it. I just think like there's a lot of people where it really can help people just feel good and like
Mm-hmm.
people are like, well, how far you'll keep taking it further. It's like actually a lot of people, if it's just this one or two things and they get it some people do, they'll ride that train of like more, more, more,
Mm-hmm.
more, but other people it's just like a simple thing and they feel so much better, so much more self-confident.
Mm-hmm.
And so I'm kind of like pro any of that kind of stuff. Any kind of, because like you said, it's a creative thing, which is kind of weird, right? Because it's
Mm-hmm.
like you actually are kind of an artist in a sense. You're like listening to somebody what they want, and you're trying to create that reality for them. Which, so that's kind of the way I view it. Is like just another way of. I'm all about people creating who you want to be in this life. So it's like that's why I'm not totally against any of that stuff because it's like it's just self-expression. It's like why do you wear the certain clothes you wear? Why do you present yourself the way you present yourself? You get to do that in this life. Create yourself.
Mm-hmm.
So it's like why and you get to help people do that. So it's kind of cool.
I
What's your
think so.
thoughts on that? It being an art form.
No, it is an art form, and I think there's some people that have it, and I think some people are kind of lacking, and it's hard. It's a hard thing to train if you're missing that eye. It's almost like trying to, teach someone who just you can tell they're never gonna get this, oil painting concept to paint or
Oh yeah,
sculpt
there's some people that want to be
or
musicians, but they're just terrible.
draw. Like
Yeah,
you want me to draw? I can do stick figures,
yeah,
but mold skin, cut skin, I'm fine with that.
yeah.
But
That's
yeah,
so interesting, right?
I can do some musical stuff. Don't ask me to dance.
Right.
My sister's having a wedding in Thailand in July, and
So you're
oh,
gonna go to Thailand?
you want to dance on the dance floor? I'm like, do you want to see Elaine Bennis dance? Because this is what I'm gonna do.
Dude, remember the Elaine dance?
This is me.
That was like so funny
I
back
know
in the
how
day.
limited I am. I don't even want to try.
Right, she would do that
So
thumb
I know my
thing.
limitations.
Right, yeah, I'm not much of a dancer either. So like I have my first bodybuilding show coming up, so
That's exciting.
it's that's the hard part is learning. So I was athletic because when I did pro wrestling, that's athletic and it is movement and probably even graceful movement in certain ways, but like this bodybuilding thing, the posing stuff is like a new level of like me being a big, tall kind of, dude, like the idea of moving smooth, slow, and graceful. It's a new thing. And I'm like, man, I should have took like, ballet or something like,
Hmm.
but yeah, I get it. Dancing is not everybody's thing, but yeah. So move back here, start the business. What was it like trying to start up a practice? Did you have to go work somewhere else first, or was it always something that you started it? Or
I started by sharing office space with another plastic surgeon in Kirkland,
Right.
and she's retired since, but that was a challenge. And it's not because of her or any of the staff. They were great. It was because of the expense of basically starting with nothing,
Yes.
and you have to pay for, the office overhead and everything.
So just a Midwest kid, go to college, and then you're trying to start a business. Like you're not. It's not like you have a bunch of money to start with either, right?
No.
So that in itself is an accomplishment.
Yeah. Bunch of money. I got a bunch of debt.
That's what I'm saying. After college, like yeah. I mean, you have this skill that's
Yeah.
very hard to get, which you put in the work and got it, but now you have to make something out of that.
Yeah.
So that's a challenge.
Yeah, that was tough. And, I stayed with her for about 6 months and then moved to my own, I shared space with an OBGYN actually, but the rent with the OBGYN was significantly lower than with the plastic surgeon in Kirkland. So
Okay.
I was in that office for about 5 years sharing space with the OB,
Mm-hmm.
and we mostly worked on different days.
Right.
So that was nice. And then the lobby, or the space across the lobby in the office where my Bellevue office is now, opened up, and we moved into there a few years ago.
Mm-hmm. And then now you have what, 2 locations?
And now a Kirkland location as well.
Right.
That was never a plan, and I don't regret it, but it was kind of just fell into my lap, so to speak,
Mm-hmm.
because the previous owners of that business decided, after owning it for a few years, they were just like, this is not for us. They had bought a medical spa from a previous owner,
Right.
and I think they realized that it just was not the right fit for them as an investment, which is why they initially bought it. So they said, you know what, why don't you buy this? Here's a steal of a deal, and otherwise we're just going to shut it down and sell the assets.
Right.
And then the business wouldn't be there anymore. So I was like, all right, I'll take it.
So when you first started, do you remember like what the first surgery you ever did was?
In practice,
With your own practice.
it was a tummy tuck.
Okay.
I
And
mean,
what is a tummy tuck exactly? Is
yeah.
that where like it's just excess skin and you're taking that out, or like?
That's a big component of it, but there's also some looseness of the abdominal wall,
Right.
which is where the muscles and the fascia lie. And when people are pregnant, the stretching of that fascia doesn't always recoil back to
Right.
normal, and so it can leave women with just kind of some looseness of their wall, and it gives a bit of a round appearance.
Mm-hmm.
Even if there's no extra skin and no extra fat, they can still just look round, and so you have to tighten that with a bunch of stitches underneath. And but it does involve typically liposuction and removal of skin.
Yeah. And so like what was it like having the first like happy patient after? Like, did you get feedback, or did you know, or like?
It's gratifying. Like, okay, this is good. I made a positive impact, and it's also like I can do this.
Yeah.
Like this training, when you're on your own, it's scary.
Well, and then you got to think about your costs and your all that stuff too. Like, how many of these surgeries do I need to be able to afford my rent, my space, and how many?
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? Like,
But really, just the psychological, just anxiety of, okay,
I'm actually cutting into a human being, and I have to fix this.
I'm doing this, and there's no one to support me, because in residency, there's always support.
It's all on you. You're the doctor.
This
You're
is
the
all
guy.
on me now. And
There's no one coming to double check you. There's no one coming to like save you if you mess up. It's you.
No.
You're the guy. Like, yeah.
It.
Was that a hard thing to like realize when you first started?
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's nerve-wracking the first few times, and it's nerve-wracking the first time with any type of surgery too.
Right. So is there still times now where something new comes up that you've never done?
That's always going to be the case.
So, and then
Yeah.
what do you do in that sense? Like when that happens, is it something where you start going to research?
You can do some research if there's papers that are written about it. You can look those up and review what other people have done. You can always fall back on the basic scientific principles of
Right.
the anatomy and tissues and how things move.
And that's how you can kind of gauge if you're like, you know what, I can do this.
Yeah.
And if you can't, I suppose you refer them to somebody else. Or,
Sure.
Yeah, but that's got to be pretty wild. Now, what surgery do you think you do the most of?
Something breast related.
I was gonna say, is that still a huge? I would like imagine being a plastic surgeon like after like the show Baywatch came out with Pamela Anderson. That was like the boom. You know what I'm saying? Like, I mean, I'm not even like kidding. There really was a huge uptick at that time, right? I mean, it just
Sure
blew
there
up at
was.
that time.
I'm sure there was.
You're probably just doing that over and over again.
Breast augmentations are huge.
Well, and it's probably
You know?
not just
And I didn't mean huge, but
huge.
it's
Well, there's
popular.
some of them get huge, but
Yeah.
and it's probably not just implants either. There's a lot of people that get them reduced or just shaped different, right? It's like not always the same thing.
No.
Yeah.
No, and the grass is always greener, right?
Right.
So if they're too small, you can't make them too big almost. If they're too big, you almost can't make them too small.
Yeah.
They always want the opposite end of whatever they've got.
And you have to always kind of go based on what they want, right? I mean,
To some degree. I mean, there's limitations, of course.
right. You have to be.
Sometimes the body just will not tolerate, whatever that goal is with one surgery. Maybe it has to be done in two.
So you've probably had to tell people, like curb their expectations somewhat sometimes. Or
Yeah,
like,
because as a surgeon, as a doctor, you have to take into account safety first. And so
obviously, that's the
anything
number
that's
one.
unsafe or you think it's unsafe, you got to just draw the line. Like, I know what you want, but it's not a safe thing for me to do this that way.
Right.
So,
Yeah, so you have to make those kind of calls, I suppose, on a regular basis.
yeah. And people usually are, appropriately responsive to that.
Yeah, they
And-
understand.
And they understand, even though it's maybe disappointing. Like, oh, well, what about, could I ever get, X result? It's like, well, maybe.
Are there some people that you think just are just never happy with?
Definitely, we refer to those people as having body dysmorphic disorder.
Yeah, it's like never good enough.
It's never good enough, and really the real definition is they see a problem that no one else can see.
Right.
And if I can't see it, I can't fix it.
That's got to be challenging.
And
yeah.
I'll tell them, like, I literally do not see what you're talking about. If I can't diagnose it, I can't treat it.
Right.
It has to be a diagnosis in order to treat.
Mm-hmm.
If you have small breasts, that I can make bigger.
Right.
If you have big breasts, that I can make smaller. But if you have something, some line, some wrinkle, some thing that doesn't...
You can't
know
even...
I can't.
Yeah. If it's something obvious, I'm sure like a nose, like...
That's a different issue.
Right. Is that something you do too, noses?
I used to. I just realized after a few years, as much as I loved doing those, the one person who really turned me on to rhinoplasties is a surgeon that I really, really got along with well in my residency. His name was Vincent DiGregorio, and he died a few years back, but he could do a rhinoplasty like Gordon Ramsay could make an omelet. I mean, it was the smoothest thing, and I was like, whoa, that looks so simple and elegant and easy, and it's not.
It's really
easy.
tough, isn't it?
It's very difficult to do well. And so, since I don't do a lot of those early on in my career, and most plastic surgeons don't, you might get one a year initially until you get good. I just moved on to other things that
you're good at.
I was better at and that I enjoyed more, and I didn't have as much chest pain doing.
Right. And that's actually understandable. Do what you're good at.
Yeah.
That is one I always think is kind of cool, though. It's like, because people will judge people that get plastic surgery, but sometimes there's people where it's like they clearly look better with what they did with their nose, and it's like you can totally see how much happier they are. So yeah, that one's pretty. And then sometimes people have to just get them fixed, like they've had their nose busted too many times, or like deviated septums, and people that are fighters, or like so. But yeah, I can understand that. So, what kind of surgery is actually your favorite to do?
That's a tough one. I think...
You probably have a few favorites.
I think there's 3 that are my favorites. I mean, we talked about tummy tucks. It's really gratifying to tighten someone's abdomen, make it so much flatter and tighter, and remove that extra skin. That I really enjoy. do enjoy breast augmentations.
Yes.
Because when they're really small, it just makes them look so much happier the patients, when
Yeah.
they've got something and they're no longer so self-conscious about having nothing.
And they feel good, yeah.
Yeah, they feel good because they look good. And then, one of my third favorites is facelifts. I think that's
Ooh.
just fun.
Yeah, is that pretty, like,
It seems,
what goes into a facelift? My God.
I mean,
You just lift the face, basically.
peeling the skin back a bit so you can get to the deeper layers. And then the way I do it is I tighten that deeper layer with some stitches to make it taut and lifted. And that brings up the fat pads in the face and really helps to rejuvenate things. And then you remove all the extra skin and stitch it up.
Right. And so what's a healing time on something like a facelift?
Typically, people are going to be looking kind of swollen and bruised for up to 2 weeks.
Yeah.
And they might not want to go out in public so much. But usually after 2 weeks, it's a lot
Starts. Okay.
Yeah.
And now the satisfaction rate on that is probably very high.
I think for the most part, people are really happy because, and the worse you are, the older you are when you get it,
Yeah.
the saggier you are,
The
the
bigger
more
of a
change
difference.
there is.
Okay.
Which is not necessarily a reason to delay it, but
Yeah.
some people just, they don't want to get it until things get to a certain point. And then at that point, they're like, okay, I'm ready.
Right. So who do you think the most famous person that had plastic surgery is?
Joan Rivers.
Joan Rivers. Yeah,
I
she's
mean,
like the OG.
She made comedy out of it.
Yeah. She really did, and she was so like when people would roast her, she never let it phase her one bit. She was part of the joke.
Yeah.
Like, I don't know. Yeah, that was wild. She was like the OG. I remember that.
Yeah.
Yeah, she was always I don't know her that much because I remember she was a comedian, but I know comedians hold her in super high regard even to this day. Even the most badass comedians. But I always remember her being on morning shows and stuff when I was a kid. That's the only way I knew her. But I think she was a legend before that.
She was a legend. Yeah.
Yeah, I was gonna say Michael Jackson, obviously.
That's another one. I feel like Michael Jackson and his nose, everyone knows
Right. Now,
about.
what's your thoughts on that? He just took that way too far, huh?
I wish I could talk specifics. I can guess that he had a surgery and then there was maybe a small issue and the next person thought that they could probably make it better and then they operated and then there was just still some imperfection and then the next person thought, well, I could do that. We just need to add a little bit more support. And then they add some cartilage and it just, the scarring that happens in such a small space can be really severe, and it's just a challenge.
And once there's probably comes a time where there's just nothing left to use, right?
Yeah.
When you're doing something the first time, there's plenty of tissue and everything probably.
And there's not scarring, and tissues are usually pretty moldable and easy to dissect, but
yeah,
as you go on, it's challenging.
So where did the original name plastic surgery come from? What is the plastic part? Is it just the idea of molding?
Molding and shaping.
It doesn't actually use any plastic.
No.
Well, sometimes there's probably little pieces or parts you use.
But the Greek term plastikos has to do with being able to mold and shape.
So that's where the root of it comes from.
Yeah.
Okay, that makes total sense. Do you know much about the history of plastic surgery?
Not a whole lot. I mean, it goes back a long ways. It's not something that...
It's actually older than we think, huh?
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, our human beings have at least been altering their bodies in certain ways, probably... Who knows, since there was a civilization that existed. Sure. Yeah. Because that's pretty interesting, too, if you think about it. But yeah, into modern time. Now, in recent times, what do you think has been the biggest technology change or thing that's gotten better in what you do in this line of work in maybe the last 5-10 years? Has there been any major advancements that have just changed everything?
I think 10 years, I would say it's facial fillers. Injectable fillers have really been getting better and better and better as technology changes, and we're able to create things that can be more runny and flowy under the skin, or we can create them to be more stiff and lifting under the skin. And,
So probably much more
this
natural
face
looking.
is not without fillers. Let's just put it that way.
See, and I would have never known that.
That's the whole
Yeah.
point.
Right. Well, I mean, we joke about it all the time. My friends are like, "You'll probably be the first one to get something done." I'm like, I'd probably just get a little, something. I don't know.
Mm-hmm.
Someday, who knows? I mean, it's like most of my heroes have definitely had stuff done. I mean, like Sylvester Stallone, Chris Jericho, like I said, all these old rock stars, like they've all had stuff done. Like
Sure.
it's part of the entertainment industry trying to keep the appearance, right?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So I'm not against it. Now, what do you think about? Have you seen the HBO show White Lotus?
I've heard of it. I haven't watched it yet.
I'm like, people probably ask you that all the time because of
Yeah.
what is it, Jennifer Coolidge?
Yeah.
Because she's probably one of the most famous people now that's really known for having a lot of plastic surgery,
Yeah.
and hers looks great also.
She's awesome.
She's
I love her.
she's hilarious.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? Just like she's another person where she's like really kind of made it work for her. It kind of like I don't know, just like embraced it. Like this
She
is
totally owns it.
yeah.
Yeah.
And it's like she really does still look good too.
She
That's the
does.
thing. I mean, you can definitely tell she's had work done, but
Yeah.
like she owns it. And yeah, she's pretty friggin' hilarious, dude.
Mm-hmm.
Like that White Lotus show. I suppose you don't get a lot of time to watch TV shows.
Oh, no. I watched plenty.
Oh, okay. I was gonna say. So
You
you
want to
still,
go down that path? I can talk about plenty of shows.
but so like you work a lot, but you still have time.
yeah.
There's probably only so many. Now, when you're doing the surgeries, is that something? Now you have the two locations, but you don't do the surgeries out of the locations, right?
Most of the time, no. I mean, minor procedures I can, but
Right.
usually I'm going to a surgery center near my Bellevue office.
Right. So you have to always book out a surgery center. And how do you get like relationships like that? You just anybody can do it that's a doctor or like
Not necessarily. Washington has various laws and regulations, but this surgery center is allowed to do cosmetic plastic surgery there. And so that's the majority of what happens.
so when you started the business, like was there I'm sure the beginning of it was tougher. Like you said, you're just this kid from the, middle class family and you're starting this thing like was there a time where it was pretty like scary at the beginning of becoming like an entrepreneur starting a business
Definitely.
where you were just putting in hours and hours and just trying to get by making it all work?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And, when you are responsible for creating your income, it doesn't just come to you. You have to find it and
Yeah,
work
because
hard for it.
I've
It's
had so many
scary.
entrepreneurs on here and it's like I don't think people understand how like there is like when you go work for somebody else, it's like they're giving you a job. This is what you do.
Yeah.
When you're trying to drum up, and I'm even finding that with being a personal trainer, like they're not going to just come to you.
No.
And if you're not used to like going out and trying to get things, like
Yeah.
so was that hard to like how did you get your name out? How long did it take before you started getting? And then the thing is, once you do great work, it helps. It all compounds on top of each other because
True.
you've proven yourself, right?
Yeah.
But it's probably still always like you have to be proactive, right? Like
Yeah, you do. You do.
Running deals, putting advertising out there.
Yeah. I mean, when I first started, it was a lot of ER call.
Yeah.
And so I would be the plastic surgeon on call for the emergency room as far up north as Swedish Edmonds.
Because you just had to take anything.
I had to take anything.
Yep, you needed the income.
Yeah. And then I was as far south as Valley, in Renton.
Right.
So sometimes I would travel from one extreme to the other, just in one day or the next, just because the ER is like, hey, we got this person with this problem, come fix it.
Was that like a lot of long days and a lot of like... Now, at that point, did you have some people working for you already too? Because you probably can't do this alone.
Just a couple, because you have to have someone doing some insurance billing, you got to have someone answering phones and, booking appointments and things like that. And then, there's always some marketing that needs to go on too.
But when you're booking out the space to do the surgeries, they provide like a nurse or somebody that helps you.
Yeah.
So
yeah.
okay, so that's how you get that taken care of.
Correct.
So you don't have to have a nurse on your staff.
So they will provide the anesthesiologist,
Yes.
the room, the equipment, all the medications and the sutures, and a scrub tech,
Yep.
and the nurse, and the check-in room, the check-out room. So yeah,
Okay, so that helps a little bit.
yeah, just have to go there and operate.
Yeah, yeah. But so then you had a few people working for you, and then how long before you started like where it felt like you were getting somewhere with it, where your name was getting out there and
I feel like I first started to feel kind of secure about 5 to 6 years in,
yeah.
which seems
So
like
it takes a lot
long
of like
time.
that. Well, they always say like when you're doing anything, it's like it's actually just like the consistency that finally, because it feels like it's never gonna go in, like it's so cheap. I watch so many cheesy like Instagram things and all that, but there was this one with Kevin Hart, the comedian, and he was talking about how it's like so easy to work really hard and so easy to grind day in and day out and put all this work in, like work that not anybody else is doing, like really hard work when you feel like you're getting somewhere. But he's like, the really hard challenge is doing that every day when it feels like you're not getting
Nothing.
anywhere.
No
And it can be like
progress.
that for a long
Yeah.
time before the needle starts to move again.
Yeah.
And I was like, that is so true. Like, because you just have to keep doing the thing and doing it and doing it. And eventually, and where do you think you are now? Like, you guys are pretty good, right? Like, you have a business that's doing well.
I feel like we are better, bigger than I would have ever imagined
Yeah.
and planned.
So it
Did not
just
plan
takes
on
time,
this.
right?
Yeah. It
Yeah.
just takes time and persistence and being ethical, reasonable, real,
That's huge.
you know?
Not the one thing that can kill you is being shady, right? Like, you got to be ethical, safe, like
I read an article the end of December. I was really shocked at what was in it about
Right.
a surgeon in this area and just
well, it's when people start going for a money grab knowing they're doing the wrong thing.
yeah.
But they're putting people's safety, they're putting their ability to make money over people's safety
Yeah.
and knowing what the right thing to do is. That's not going to work out in the long run for you.
No.
It's like anything where if you take the easy path or
It's going to come back to bite
you
you
got
at
to
some
do
point.
things the right way.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, that's good. I mean, you got to be ethical and everything. That's probably a big part of what you do, right?
It is, and we all know of various issues and surgeons and people, oh, she's shady or he's sketchy or whatever. I mean, in the industry, I'm sure you know people in your industry where
Oh,
you're
yeah,
like,
yeah.
man,
100%.
I don't know.
That's like the last reputation you want to get.
Yeah.
So,
It's not worth it.
no. So, how do you avoid that? Just
Stay true to yourself. And, I've always been just like a true, honest, normal person. And I think it comes across to my patients too. They're like, oh,
Yeah.
yeah, he's just kind of a normal guy. I'm like, I am.
yeah.
I'm nothing special other than I did some training and I
put some
learned a
work
skill,
in. Yeah.
and that's all it is. I'm like, anybody can go to med school. You just have to like pass the tests and do the work.
Right.
And it's not for everybody. I'm not saying.
I was going to say, like,
is.
it probably seems like that, and it is like that. But yeah, there's probably some people that they could go to med school and it wouldn't work
Not
out the
make
same.
it.
I'm sure you do have some kind of talent. But yeah, there's a lot of people that are really good at things will talk like that. Like, even like fight, like Conor McGregor always says that. Like, he's like, he's like, I don't have talent. I just outwork everybody else, like. But you probably are actually really talented. It's like
I'll take your word for it.
right. But usually talented people won't. They're humble about that kind of stuff. So that's a testament, to being a talented person.
I think that's important as a surgeon too, humility, because the moment you're, arrogant, and that's one reason why, honestly, arrogance alone, why I never thought I could become a doctor or especially a surgeon.
Right.
I didn't think that I was going to fit with that group of people because of my perception of their personalities as a whole.
Like, what's the stereotype of plastic surgeons? I was gonna say, have you ever seen that show Nip Tuck?
Yes.
Do you remember that show?
That's probably pretty stereotypical.
Dude, that
Someone
show
who's
was
shady,
awesome.
Yeah,
that
raking
show-
in the money and doing real sketchy things with patients.
Well, like the one dude just like womanizing constantly,
Yes.
like just like
Yeah.
using the practice as a way to like
Yeah.
be a playboy. But I mean, I was gonna say like that show was pretty awesome.
Yeah.
Like that was when like those kind of shows first kind of started. Those like, and we used to watch that in college. Like my cousin, she was really big into that, and I'm like, what is this show? I'm like, oh, then I was hooked on it,
Yeah.
And they're like feeding people to alligators and stuff, and like. just like it's wild. Like, but anyways, yeah. So that's probably the stereotype, kind of like playboy, like, big ego.
Playboy, slick, sleek,
Yeah.
can wheel and deal and, drives a Porsche and, we're all rich and we're all in it for vanity money and all of that.
Right.
And honestly, the idea of vanity, that's another reason why when I was young, I was like, I don't understand plastic surgery. Cosmetics, it doesn't make sense to me.
Right.
What is wrong with these people that they have to be so vain about
Right. Is that
themselves?
a tough part of your job in a sense? Like,
Sometimes, yes, because again, there are these people who have issues where either I can't see it or I know there's no way I can get to their goal.
right.
And if I can't make it happen, I shouldn't even try and I should just refer away.
So there's like this wonderful side of it, helping people get confidence, making them happy for the first time, and then there's probably a dark side too.
There's a little bit. There's a
Yeah.
little bit. But the vast majority of it is really we're both happy.
Right.
The patient's
Yeah.
happy, I'm happy. Thank God it worked out. It's like
Well, you have to.
good.
You
We
probably have to
made it
like
happen.
gauge people's mental health and stuff a little
True.
bit too when you're choosing if you're going to operate on someone or
Well, that's
not.
why I think, vanity truly is a small component of it, even though that could be the perception, as an outsider or someone who's like, oh, people,
Oh, I
plastic
think there's a
surgery, what is
huge
that?
stigma against it.
Yeah.
Some people just like, and it just, I don't understand the stigma against it because it's probably because I'm kind of a creative myself.
Mm-hmm.
So I understand the idea of like creating yourself.
Mm-hmm.
But there is a stigma, wouldn't you say?
There is, and I think it's getting a little bit better, but there are still a lot of people out there. I mean, we would ask people to record testimonials and, how was your experience with us, or give us a review online, and some people don't want to do it because they don't want anyone to know that they were at a plastic surgeon's office
They don't even
ever.
want people to know they ever did anything.
Yeah,
Yeah.
even if it's just like Botox or something.
Yeah, I'll do some Botox someday, bro. I don't know why not.
But I feel like, the vain part of it is
Well, people don't
what
want to be
people
seen as vain.
think about it.
Yeah.
But in my experience, most of it is a pretty big psychological component
Right.
where, you've got an issue, it bothers you to the extent that you're willing to go see a doctor about it. It's something that you look at every day.
Yeah.
You don't like looking at that every day and you want it to be gone or fixed or altered in some way. And once that's changed, then
It's like you're free of it.
you're free. It's done. It's over.
Because I think that's what people are always like, well, they'll want the next thing and the next thing, it'll never be enough. But I think you're right. I really think there are certain things where once they get that one thing that's just bugging them, like, it's like all of a sudden they're just like free of it. It's like, finally, I'm just like the thing, it's gone or it's done and I can like move on with my life. You know what I mean? All right, everybody, it is time to take a short break for our sponsors. The Nicky Free podcast is now brought to you by Manscaped. They are the best in men's below-the-waist grooming. Their products are precision-engineered tools for your family jewels. Manscaped's Performance Package, the ultimate men's hygiene bundle. So join over 7 million men worldwide who trust Manscaped with this exclusive offer for you. So it is 20% off and free shipping worldwide with the code NickyFit at manscaped.com. So the thing about it is like when you're, you're trying to shave your balls, you got like a date or something, you don't know where things are going to go, but you don't want to be like showing up all messy down there. You want to show up all clean. You want to be looking good down there. You know what I'm saying? So like we've all done that. You get a shaver out, you go to shave yourself. And what happens every time? You cut your balls, man. And it's no good when you cut your balls. You start bleeding all over your ball sack. You got blood going everywhere. You get it cleaned up. You go on the date. And, like, obviously, you're a high-performance male. So, like, things are going good for you in the date. Stuff starts going well. And next thing you know, like, one thing leads to another. But then the thing is you whip it out. And, like, there's a big thing. Like, your balls are all cut up. And it's, like, all sore down there. And it's, like, such a turnoff, So it's, like, you don't want that to happen to you, Like, you don't want a big open wound on your ball sack when you're out on a date. Like, that's just no way to be. So check out the Performance Package 4.0 has arrived, and it is a game changer. So inside this package, you'll find the Lawnmower 4.0 trimmer, which is right here. And look at these things, man. Manscaped's products are so aesthetically pleasing looking. Like the design on it, it looks like something that Batman would use. It's like so sleek. It's all black. It's just like aesthetically pleasing to look at. They've done such a good job. So this is the Lawnmower 4.0. The other thing that comes in the performance package is the Weed Whacker, nose hair and ear trimmer, because it's like, I see this all the time. You're talking to somebody and it's like they take care of themselves, they eat healthy, they work out, they're trying to look good and everything, but then it's like you look at their nose and it's a bunch of nose hair sticking out. Bro, take care of that. Like, why do you want to do that? Use the Weed Whacker nose and ear hair trimmer, because like, clean that shit up, dude. Nobody wants to see that, man. Inside the package, you're also going to find the Crop Preserver Ball Deodorant, because you want your balls to smell good, the Crop Reviver Toner, and then also the boxer briefs that come with. And I'm probably going to take some scantily clad photos in these, because, if you've seen my Instagram, the leaner I get, the more like scantily clad photos and videos I take. So I'm going to be rocking these Manscaped things, showing off the abs, trying to look sexy online. I'll be taking some videos in these. It also comes with the travel bag, so you can carry it all with you, so that when you're on the go, you got to be looking good when you're on the go. So let's talk a little bit about the Lawnmower 4.0. This trimmer is the future of grooming, and dare I say, the greatest ball hair trimmer ever. It's a 4th generation trimmer. It features cutting edge ceramic blades to reduce grooming accidents thanks to the advanced skin safe technology. The Lawnmower 4.0 is waterproof. It also has an LED spotlight, so when you're down there doing it, man, like, you can see all the nooks and crannies. It got the spotlight on it, so you're not missing any spots or anything. Because it's waterproof, you can say goodbye to the mess on the bathroom floor. You can do it in the shower. You can, So guys, it's time to take care of yourself. All right, look at this. Look at this product. It's awesome. Thank you, Manscaped. This stuff is so great. They also threw in this beard hedger, which is just a great beard trimmer. We'll talk about that another time. But this is the performance package. So yeah, guys, go online, go to manscaped.com. If you want 20% off, use code NickyFit. You will get 20% off and free shipping worldwide. So check out the performance package. It's awesome. And thank you guys so much. Use code NickyFit. Save 20%. You're really helping out the podcast. And I want to say that I was already using Manscaped before they started sponsoring the podcast. I think they're a great product. So thank you guys for picking this stuff up. Use code NickyFit. Save 20% and free shipping. You're really helping me out. You're helping out the podcast. And thank you to Manscaped. And thank you guys. Go out there. Let's get cleaned up. Let's not go out there all messy and stuff. We got to look good. All right, guys. Thank you. Yeah. So that's got to be a great feeling when you give that to people. And I think that happens a lot. So people, I do see that there's people that just never are happy, but I do think that's a big thing. Like, it's like someone with a really big nose or something, and they hate it, and they get it fixed, and all of a sudden they're like, that's all I needed, and they're good, and they move on with their life, I
think that's the majority.
Yeah.
It really is.
It really is, yeah. Has there been a lot of advancement with making some of these surgeries like more affordable recently, or like loans for people, or is it still like something that only...
There are financing plans for sure.
Yeah.
Where you can get personal loans and break up the payments over the course of a few years.
Yeah.
I don't think the costs have actually gone down.
I was going to say,
after COVID.
Right. So what's your thoughts on like, certain insurance? Do you think insurance should cover more things, or?
Insurance is a tough one. I feel like insurance is a necessary evil. Necessary meaning you got to have it for the things that are necessary. Because if you can't afford $100,000 hospital stay,
right,
then spend a few $100 a month and buy insurance. But the challenge is in my field when things, especially like a breast reduction, when things
Right.
are on the verge of, is this cosmetic or is it really going to improve someone's function?
That's probably the one I would think the most that people maybe get insurance to cover it
Yeah.
for.
Yeah.
Because it actually can like harm their back or.
Correct. Those are usually people who have chronic back and neck pain. And
So that
shoulder
one's
pain.
kind of in the okay range or
Yeah.
whatever. But yeah, at the end of the day, it's like, yeah, I guess I kind of agree. Like if something is not necessary, you should probably just have to like work to get it, like anything else in life, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean that makes sense.
But
yeah,
wouldn't it be great if
I mean,
we could
I'm
all
sure
get
everybody.
our cosmetic surgery covered?
Well, you go in the army or something, they usually do it then. Yeah. Get something like that. But
Or work for a plastic surgeon and you get the employee discount.
there you go. That probably helps out sometimes.
Let me tell you, it helps me because especially when there's a new product or a new injectable or something like that, you know, the reps want you to try it and experience it, and then you can see what it feels like and what it looks like and what
Right.
it can do, and so that's what I do.
Is now is Botox something that's like you do it once, or is that something where you have to keep doing it over throughout the years?
You can do it once and experience it, and if you like it, then you'd have to do it about every 4 months.
Oh, so it's something that goes away.
Yeah, it just kind
That
of
I did not know.
the results don't last forever, but you're not going to be, ruined if you try it and you don't keep it.
Oh yeah, like it doesn't like ruin anything.
Some people think that, like, well, what if I don't do it? Am I going to look worse if I just stop?
Does it just kind of go back to normal?
It just goes back to normal.
Oh, okay, yeah. That makes sense. Yeah. So, what is the most challenging surgery that you've ever had to do?
Oh man, something that
And like length too. What's the longest one?
Yeah, this was in residency. A guy had the thinking was that he had shot himself with a shotgun as a suicide
damn.
attempt.
Yeah.
But then there were also murmurs of, well, maybe his wife shot him, and they had marital issues. We didn't really ever find out the real truth to that.
Right.
But half of his jaw was kind of missing at that point, so he had an open wound and some teeth were gone, and
My God.
you got to stabilize the person and get some antibiotics and some blood and make sure that he's got some nutrition in him. So he was in the hospital for a while before we could even then do the reconstructive surgery, which this was easily a 12-hour day, and took his fibula from the same side and brought it up here and stitched in the artery and the vein, and you screw in and plate the bone.
Wow.
And the skin over it, and create a jaw so that he's got something there. That
is
was
so
the most
crazy.
complex.
It's so crazy that you can take bone from one part of your body, hook it up in another spot, and that the body just kind of accepts it, heals it. It becomes like function. That's like pretty mind blowing,
That's the most mind-blowing thing I've ever done, and that's the longest surgery I've ever done, and I've never done it since.
Were the results pretty good, or?
Well, again, it's initially about function. Like he's
It's
got
function.
a
I
hole.
mean, you
Let's
blew-
close the hole.
Your face got blown off. Is
Yeah.
like it's not gonna be. You're not gonna be like a supermodel. But
Yeah. And that was, kind of near the end of my training. So, I mean, I saw it heal, but I didn't see kind of the final result, which truly, I mean, that'd be a year or two later
right.
for something like that.
Dang. But yeah, I mean, he had to feel better after that. I'm sure.
Mm-hmm.
So that was probably that was the most challenging. You think?
Mm-hmm.
What's the most challenging of the just kind of like cosmetic stuff? Like not like that was something that was an accident. He's trying. Like this is, I mean, like something that people want to have done, like breast implants or.
It's a combination of a breast lift and an implant at the same time.
Oh.
And sometimes people, they're small and they're droopy.
Right.
So you want to tighten them, lift them up, and put an implant in.
So that's what I mean, that's what every girl wants, probably.
Well,
right?
sometimes you're not droopy and you're just small.
They just, okay. Yeah.
Sometimes you're not small, you're just droopy. But when there's both and you need to do implants and a lift at the same time, that's probably the most challenging because those are two very opposite forces that you're doing at the same surgery.
Really?
You put an implant in and that stretches things out and makes it heavier.
But you're trying to pull it
then
up.
you're trying to pull it up and make it tighter and remove the skin and tighten the breast and reshape it over that. It's it's the thing that's known to be, I guess, with the highest dissatisfaction among patients.
Dang.
That combination. And again, it's not a high dissatisfaction rate. It's a high satisfaction rate. But of all the things that we do, that's combination where people would be like, well, I wish this was a little different, or that was lower and this is bigger, and that kind of thing. So you can revise things.
Yeah.
There's always that possibility. So, the end result after one surgery isn't necessarily the end all be all.
Right. So there's always opportunity you can like do more, change it afterwards.
You can.
When people do breasts, are they something that heals pretty fast, or is that a painful?
The two most painful surgeries that cosmetic plastic surgeons do would be a breast augmentation, putting implants under the chest muscle.
Yeah, so what's the difference? Why? Because I've known a girl that did that where she got them under the chest muscle. Like, why? Like, I just don't understand that. Why would it ever be under the muscle? Because like real breasts, they don't have muscle sitting over the top of them, so it's like
you're spot on.
It's weird. It
anatomically doesn't make sense to put a fake breast under a muscle when it's not.
And wouldn't that make the muscle operate weird, or like?
It could. Most of the time, it doesn't.
Okay.
But the reason to do that, there's a couple. One is if the actual breast tissue is so thin that you're probably likely to see or feel the implant if you just put it under the breast. And if you think about a mastectomy patient, they don't have breasts, they just have skin.
Right.
And if you put an implant under that skin, you're going to see every ripple of that silicone or saline. It's
not going to look real.
It's going to look real fake, and you'll have a mound. You'll have something to fill a bra, but if you take the bra off, you can see.
So that's where
fake.
So like the other way is like there's breast tissue. You put the implant under that breast tissue.
You can.
So that's one way. The real tissue is like on top.
Yeah.
Okay, but this other one is where it's under the chest muscle.
Under the muscle, under the pectoralis major muscle. Yeah.
And what's the other benefits of that?
The other benefit is it can have a lesser chance of developing what's called capsular contracture, which is where the scar tissue that forms around the implant starts to squeeze on the implant and causes it to be hard and misshapen and look unnatural, feel unnatural, and even be painful.
Now, are breast implants something that has to be redone after a certain number of years?
They do have a failure rate, a rupture rate. It's somewhere around like 20-30% after about 10 years for some of these implants. It's you never know if it's going to rupture or when it's going to rupture. And if they do and you get it diagnosed, it's usually not anything that's really detrimental to the health and not an emergency. But at some point, something man-made is going to fail.
Right.
Your car does. And so
it's not technically part of the body.
No.
Yeah.
So.
And then so that one where they put it under the muscle, is that what makes that so painful, if that's one of the more painful?
It's painful because you've suddenly got this big thing that you can't remove and you can't unstretch that muscle. So if you're forced to have your hamstring stretched constantly for days and weeks and you can't unstretch it, it's just
Does the muscle
painful.
eventually just form,
it does.
change over time?
Muscles will stretch, they'll eventually just kind of relax and be in their new position, and it is what it is.
Man, that's so weird.
Yeah, so you can stretch a muscle quite a ways and it'll be okay. But it does still function,
Yeah.
So
if they're doing bench presses, it's the muscle over. That's so weird. Yeah, that's interesting. I knew that was a thing because I knew a girl that had that done. Yeah. And I was like, oh, okay.
It doesn't make sense, but there are reasons to do it. And I think, some surgeons tend to be, I always put them under the muscle. And some surgeons tend to be, I always put it over the muscle. And, I educate my patients about both ways. And I tell them the pros and cons for them.
And then they kind of decide.
Help make a decision, yeah.
Okay, that makes sense. How many of those do you think you do a year?
Breast augmentations or under the muscle?
Well, just breast augmentations in general.
I don't know, maybe 20 or 30. I mean, it's either that by itself or there's a mixture of a lift, and then I do a fair amount of reductions too. So it's a combination of things.
So that's kind of the bread and butter of everything. Still, yeah, that makes sense. I mean, that's like, it's a. cosmetic thing. So
Mm-hmm.
that makes a lot of sense.
It really changes women's lives, though, and
Oh, I
the
think it
vast
does
majority of
big
the time,
time.
they're really happy.
I was gonna say you probably hardly ever have anybody unhappy with that.
The reason why they're unhappy, if they're going to be unhappy, is the implant size is not the right size that they were thinking. And usually it's, oh, I thought they were going to be bigger than this.
Yeah, it's never the other way around, huh?
Hardly ever.
Once in a while, have you ever had that where they're like, oh, they're actually too big?
Too big?
No, it's still bigger.
It's
Better.
always been the other way. It's always been the other way.
I mean, that's normal.
They're
I
too
guess.
small. I wish they were bigger.
Yeah, I guess that makes sense. What's the most common surgery you do for men?
Hmm.
Or is that kind of all over the place?
Probably gynecomastia surgery.
Right.
Yeah.
And is that mostly all bodybuilders, or is that just like in general?
It can be bodybuilders, it can be people who are really lean and muscular, it can be guys who are just
And for people that don't
big.
know, well, so I'm in the bodybuilding community, so most people, we all know gyno,
Sure.
So it's like that's where men have breast tissue. Like that's like The Rock had that, like
Yeah.
so because I've seen that where like even like a young dude who's probably late teens and just totally lean, like you said, not any body fat, and he only had it on one side,
Mm-hmm.
and it was crazy. And I saw the surgeon did it, and it's like that's so random. Like, what even causes that?
Yeah, man.
Do they know what causes it?
Most of the time, we don't really know a cause, and we theorize that it has to do with hormones being kind of off balance. But
I always wonder if it has
why
something.
on one side?
Yeah, why just one side? That's so
Hormones
wild.
didn't just go to one breast,
Right.
So
It's
who
like
knows?
I always wonder if it has something to do with like modern like plastics, chemicals, or like
It makes you wonder.
affecting hormones, because I'm sure that's affecting females' hormones too.
Yeah.
Like maybe breasts growing too big too fast, or like
It's been theorized that, like, growth hormones in dairy, milk,
right. I've heard of that.
we're all drinking the milk, and the women, all these girls are having huge breasts because of that. I mean,
Yeah, who knows?
who knows?
Yeah, it's like wow, we live in such a modern time. We're
There's a lot
surrounded
of-
by all these different
Yeah.
things. I was gonna say, so what about? Have you ever done any kind of surgeries that like helped somebody really alleviate pain or anything?
Yeah, I, saw one of my patients this afternoon, and she is feeling no pain after a breast surgery to remove, she had capsular contracture on one side,
Right.
and remove the scar tissue in the implant and put a brand new implant in. And she was just in chronic pain for years.
Right. And when you help relieve somebody's pain, it has to be an immediate, like, I think people don't, when they're in pain and it's like chronic, like you said, they don't even remember what it's like to like not have that pain. And if they get it
Yeah.
relieved, it's like a fresh lease on
Life-changing.
life, like,
Life changing.
yeah.
I'm
So
one of those people. Yeah.
what'd you have?
I didn't have anything surgical, but I had a L5 S1
Back.
disc bulge.
Yeah.
Yeah, so my back, and it hurt pretty much all through college, med school, and residency, and 20 years of pain. I could pretty much count on it every day. And once I got some steroid injections,
That took care of it?
finally got better.
Wow.
So I haven't
Just,
had pain
you
in a
didn't
few
even have to have
years.
surgery either.
No. And I begged surgeons for surgery. I'm like, there's got to be something you can do. And they're like, we don't see anything. We're not going to do it. Go to physical therapy. One of
Yeah.
them, in my residency, I just happened to ask him because he operated on spines, and he did redos. I mean, the worst of the worst. And I was like, look at my MRI. He's like, oh, you don't need surgery. See this little disc bulge? Easiest thing to miss on an MRI. You just need some steroids.
But isn't that weird how it took like 20 years and just one doctor to find the right thing, and it was so simple?
Yeah.
That has to be kind of aggravating.
I can tell you it can happen to all of us as
Yeah.
doctors and patients. But yeah, I was like, well, then let's do the steroids, and life changing.
Wow. Yeah, it is crazy when well, because we, as like a trainer, and I know some trainers, like, they've in a sense been able to kind of do that for people by like, weight loss, or like where these people have felt like their quality of life is so gone, and then they, either they get on a diet, they lose weight, they get healthier, they start working out, something changes, and it's like they've gotten their life back, which is probably it's like a gift.
Yeah.
So that's got to feel good when you can do that for people. you
Yeah.
know?
Yeah, because I can totally sympathize with it.
Right after what you had. Yeah. Man, that's crazy. And so how's your back now?
No, I'm good.
All good.
As long as I don't do the cobra in yoga or lift some heavy. That's one reason why I think I had this all through med school and residency, and it never healed and resolved. I was trying to be helpful and lift patients, in and out of the OR all the time, and
Well, I was going to say, like,
my back's not made for it.
with you doing these surgeries and stuff, what is that, like the wear and tear on your body? What's that like?
Most of the time, it's not too bad, but I mean, I've done liposuction many cases for hours at a time, and
Yeah.
after a while, your shoulders start.
It's like
to
you got to
hurt.
get right in there.
Yeah.
Yeah. Is there like, are you in hunched over weird awkward position? Like even some tattoo artists, they're like that for like a long period of time.
Can be.
Yeah.
I try to make. I'm known for the guy who brings the operating room table way up high, and so everyone who's assisting has to stand on stools because I just
it's
don't
like,
want to
I
bend
need-
down. Yeah, I got to keep my neck straight, and I got to keep my back straight, and just
Oh, I get that. Like everything for me, I like everything tall.
yeah.
It's so funny. Like we'll have stuff that's like down low, and I'm like, I'm not gonna get down there. We gotta like,
Yeah.
I'll do the stuff
Bring it
up here. Like
Bring
you
it up
guys
to me.
take care of that stuff down there. But yeah, because that's just healthier for your back. That's like standing desks,
Mm-hmm.
like in the office and stuff. Like my friend works as a mortgage guy, and he's like, so because he's on his computer all the time, he like literally he'll do the thing where he sits on the ball. Those that helps with like posture and back and everything. But then he also has where he can like raise his desk up, standing desk. But then he also added to it he put a treadmill, this little walking treadmill with no front. Like usually they have a front thing. This is just the treadmill on the ground.
Nice.
So he can like walk on this treadmill with
While
the
he's
desk raised
working.
up while he's working. I'm like, that's ergonomic. That's
I
a
like
great
the sound of
idea.
that. I like that.
So as you've expanded your business over the last few years, what does the future look like for you?
That's a good question.
Like, will it keep growing? Are you good where you're at? Or like,
Man, I wouldn't have expected 2 office locations, especially so close together.
yeah,
It never made sense to me. And then when this just kind of happened, so to speak, I was like, well, okay.
it just
And
kinda
it's been
happened.
good. And we've been growing and doing well. I don't know that I don't think of plans of expanding and adding more.
So for now, it's good. You're not like planning on moving somewhere.
Not that I'm planning on.
Not gonna buy that sports car, move to California, start a heat. No, you
not
just
at-
get.
Not at this point.
Yeah, that's a good. So, what's the most rewarding part about it?
The business in general?
Yeah, just like we're doing.
Changing lives.
Yeah.
I mean, really changing lives, transforming people, and you see just certain things just melt away from their faces in a good way.
Yeah.
You're like, oh,
And then
I'm happy.
you have a pretty good team around you now. Like, how did that all come to be? Was that hard to put it together? Like, how long did it take to get? Because the current team, how many people do you have now?
Well, we have 3 estheticians, and I've got 4 people kind of working at the front desk and consulting with patients, and then there's one behind the office doing administrative things. And,
Yeah.
And then there's me.
Right. And so how do you guys like get leads and get more people?
And a new nurse practitioner injector.
Oh.
But yeah, how do we get leads?
Yeah, how do you get more people? How did you get your name out there and everything?
I mean,
Just
initially, yeah, advertising mostly online.
Mhm.
And, then some word of mouth because you do some good stuff for people and then they refer people.
Right.
And, Facebook, Instagram, all of those kinds of things, of course, as well. And, you get some good referral patterns with different doctors in the area that
Yep.
send you things. Oh, he's the breast guy. He's the liposuction guy. He's the filler guy. Whatever.
So you get kind of known to be a specialty in certain things.
Yeah.
Like in a positive way.
Yeah.
Has it been kind of wild being like the plastic surgeon, like in your friend group or anything, or like, has it been like, do you ever like go to parties and it's like, man, he's the plastic surgeon? Like,
People will, yeah, they will.
is
they
it
will
awkward or is it fun?
behave or respond a little differently?
Yeah.
But I'm just me.
Right.
I don't do that. I don't think that about myself.
It's back to
I
that
don't-
that ego
I don't
thing.
emulate it about myself.
Yeah.
I mean, I like to dress well.
I was like, you know how to
especially for
dress, because I was
patients,
saying
but-
like your jackets are always like just on point. I was looking at the photos to put your promo together, and I'm like, man, this guy dresses You dress nice.
Do you want me to put a little blurb out there for where?
Yeah.
David Lawrence at the Bravern in Bellevue.
Uh-huh.
That's the
Well,
store
you gotta
to
dress
go
nice.
to.
If you're like in Bellevue,
Yeah.
like Bellevue's bougie. You gotta.
Bellevue is, but Kirkland is too.
Kirkland's kind of bougie too.
Kirkland is too.
Yeah.
But, I mean, in my residency program, we had to wear slacks,
Yeah.
a shirt and tie, and I kind of did the sort of, office kind of
Attire.
little frumpy kind of thing, honestly, for a while. And at some point a few years ago, I stepped it up a notch, and I'm like, all right.
Well, I mean, it's kind of like if you're a plastic surgeon and you don't have some kind of style, it's gonna say to me like, "Where's the creative part?"
Well, and is that something that is a concern for patients?
You think
It's
it could
like-
have the opposite effect, like this guy's goofy or something?
Or, well, if he doesn't look well, or, this guy looks like he's slimy. He like wears, these weird jackets and
Right. I think dressed well, if you're a surgeon, to me, puts out the idea like, this guy knows what he's doing. Like I know you're like very humble and no ego, but like you have to have some kind of like presentation, right? To like,
I think so.
yeah, I think that's important in business. So where do you think you drew your style from?
Again, that store, I got to tell you, at first time I walked in there, I was a little overwhelmed because
Yeah.
I'm like, this is like high fashion. I'm not.
But
into
once you
this.
start wearing it, it kind of you're like,
Well,
I can pull this off.
perfect salesman. Try this. This is your size. You'd like that. You really need to try this on.
Yeah.
And here, just take these 15 things. Go to the dressing room. Let me know what you want.
And then after a while, you kind of get your own style built up and everything. And
But it's a little out of my element initially. But
then it kind of becomes part of you, right?
Once I discovered, okay, I actually do like this. This fits well. It looks
Yeah.
well, and it's me. I'm like, okay.
Yeah, it's like look
I'm
good,
owning it.
feel good.
Yeah.
Yeah, and you'll own. I mean, I've seen dudes where they'll do that for the first time, where like they get successful or something. And they, the first time they start wearing a really nice watch and like some nice like pair of sunglasses, and like they're like, "Is this me?" And then after a while, it's like they just kind of embrace it, and it becomes. It's like I said, it goes back to that thing of just kind of creating your own style. And I mean, that's kind of like in the bodybuilding community, that's a huge thing. You see a lot of bodybuilders have different styles, like how they represent themselves, what they kind of wear. It's same with like musicians, bands.
Yep.
It's just all part of art, But like I said, I think if you're a surgeon and you're not dressed well, I'd be like, it'd be weird.
Well, I will say the easiest, best way to get up in the morning is to put on scrubs. Because who doesn't like going to work in their pajamas?
Yeah, that's probably
I'll tell
actually
ya,
comfy,
It's
right?
so easy. It's comfortable. There's no thought.
Yeah.
And, it's great.
Right.
But I do like dressing, and I like looking nice,
Right. You represent.
Yeah.
So like when you're doing surgery and all that stuff, like when you first started learning that stuff, like I like after the cadavers and all that kind of stuff, like then what kind of surgeries were the first ones you ever did on real people?
Well, in med school, I mean, I was assisting and retracting and suctioning and that
So
kind
it's
of
a lot
thing.
of that at first.
Yeah,
Very
it's a lot
slow
of that.
procedure.
You don't do much in med school, but I did a general surgery rotation, which was kind of trauma, and the VA hospital. So that was pretty kind of sicker guys.
Yeah.
And then I also did a transplant rotation. And,
okay.
some of those liver transplant people, those are real sick people. But
Is that like a lot of it because of alcoholism or just like
it could be,
or other diseases? Yeah.
usually that or hepatitis.
Okay. Now, is that super hard and technical, like hooking up a freaking organ?
The livers, those were challenging. Some of
Yeah.
those surgeries would take, 8 hours.
Like when you're doing a surgery, is it like, what are some of the tiniest little things you're having to deal with? Like, is it just wild, all the little stuff you have to hook up? And
Well, part of a plastic surgeon's training is microsurgery, where we're literally using a microscope to stitch tiny vessels that are 1 or 2 millimeters in diameter. I mean, that's small.
how do you even do that?
You rest your wrists on a towel and you only move your fingers. and you've got instruments that are so small and sutures that are even thinner than hair. And you can barely see them, you can barely see the needle.
Yeah.
Honestly, a little insider, a little tip here. Sometimes we lose those needles, and they're so small
Well, yeah.
that if it's just gone, we're like, well, it's so
somewhere.
tiny. Who
It's
knows
not going to
where
really
it is? It's not
matter.
going to really cause a problem. So you just like give up. But we try. We got magnets, and you sweep the floors,
Right.
and everyone looks for it for a while. Most of the time, you find them.
That is wild.
Yeah.
Yeah. Did it take you a long time to get comfortable with that kind of thing?
Yeah, and again, it's not something that I do a whole lot of. The last time I did anything with the microscope was, man, I don't know, 5 or 6 years ago. So I'm not too into it, but it's awkward at first because you're normally not using a microscope to look at stuff, you
Right.
know, and you're not moving your hands so tiny, small movements to do
Right,
your
because you're
surgery.
looking through it while doing something
Yeah.
that you're watching. That's different. Like, if you're a kid and you're in science class, you look through and you see like the microbes or cool, but
Yeah.
you're not like
Trying to
moving
move them.
anything.
Yeah.
Yeah. So what other kind of hobbies do you have outside of what you do? Is there like
Got a couple dogs.
Yeah.
So the dogs are really the children in the family. Cause
Dogs
we
are
don't have
great.
kids. Dogs are great. We love
Yeah.
our dogs. I have a 5-pound toy poodle,
Uh-huh.
and his name's Pierre because, poodles are French. He has to have a French name.
Oh yeah, you gotta call him Pierre.
Yeah.
It's only fitting.
He's like Tigger from Winnie the Pooh. He's a
Like,
grasshopper.
just tons
he jumps
of
all
energy.
over the place, lots of energy. Every time he gets put on the bed, he jumps around for 5 or 10 minutes, runs around like a maniac.
Right.
Like it's the most exciting play space for him. I don't get it. Every
Okay.
single time.
Just he's full of energy.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then we've got the opposite extreme, a 14-pound Shih Tzu,
Yeah.
who's slightly larger in size and, again, 3 times the weight. But he's like a linebacker, and I like to refer to him as a cat in a dog's body.
Right. He's just like got that kind of attitude.
Way chill, a little aloof. I'm not going to come to you even if you call me unless I really want to come or if I think you have food.
That's really cat-like. Yeah.
Yeah.
Do you ever? I was gonna say I work at a bar that's dog friendly. If you ever want to bring your dogs in, Post Dog Brewery.
For sure.
Yeah, it's super dog friendly. Do your dogs do well around other dogs, or like?
They do. If they're on a leash, then Pierre generally is totally fine and doesn't bark.
And they're good with a lot of people and stuff. Yeah, that's one part of my job I just love is like all the dogs and everything. So what other kind of hobbies do you have? Is that it? Just kind of dogs?
I got the dogs. Just moved to a house in Woodinville. That's got some issues, so we're trying to gradually work on
The
fixing
house.
the roof and updating the bathroom and
Right.
changing the appliances. So
That's
a
probably
lot
kind of
work there.
fun. Yeah.
It's kind of gratifying, I mean, because it goes from kind of old to gradually new and nice and kind of what we want. But we do like camping as well, and so taking our little trailer out. Let's be real, it's glamping. I don't sleep
Right.
in a tent. I don't sleep on the floor anymore.
What's the best like camping food?
Oh, camping food.
Schmars.
Man, well, yeah, that's pretty good.
I was thinking breakfast.
That's pretty good. I tend to do it a little more than that, I'm
Charcuterie.
down for charcuterie.
Yeah.
I'll cook stuff. I'll brine stuff. I'll make all kinds of stuff that's a little bit more gourmet. But you can still make it
I was gonna say, are you into
at the
cooking? Or?
campsite. I love cooking. You talk about my real hobby.
Let's talk about it.
Let me tell you, if I weren't doing plastic surgery, I'd probably doing something with food
Right.
because
So there was I'm like since I'm so close to my show, I'm not eating a lot of calories. It'll get worse and worse over the next few weeks. I'll be basically like starving. But there's this show on HBO. It was like the Soul Food Cook-Off Challenge. If you ever want to watch that, it's so fun. It's like just like they're making all this like, kind of like Southern soul food type of stuff, like the stuff that people, originally like poor communities would take the scraps and turn it into something, and that's kind of how soul food. So it's like shrimp, like a lot of seafood, collard greens,
Yeah.
grits, but the way they do it's so creative. So like I can get in. What's your favorite like cooking style? Or what do you like to make?
Oh man, I'm known for my chicken tikka masala,
Yeah.
and I've got friends that ask for that. When we got an upgrade of our stove from one to the next one. The christening dish. We asked our friend, what do you want it to be? The initial dish. He's like chicken tikka masala.
Yeah,
Well, didn't
because
even
that's your
hesitate.
solid dish that you make really good, huh?
Yeah,
Man, I mean, I love chicken. That's like the best.
chicken's good.
Chicken's good. Yeah, yeah. So cooking and dogs and plastic surgery. What?
And camping
And camping.
and traveling.
Yeah, where do you go to travel?
The most recent trip was, at least foreign trip, was to Portugal, and I'd never been there before. I'd
How
never
was
been
that?
to that part of the world. I'd been to Europe and Central Europe and Northern Europe and even Italy.
So the
Portugal
kid
was
that didn't even want to
great.
move away from home, now you got all that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
The reason why the first foreign travel I did actually was in college, and because my degree was European studies with
Right.
an emphasis in Russian, the requirement was you had to spend a quarter abroad.
Ooh. Yeah.
So I went to Europe for 3 months with European quarter 95 as a student. That was
Uh-huh.
1995. And there were about 25 of us that went as a group, and we traveled around Germany, Austria. Actually, it wasn't Austria then, but Germany, Czech Republic, and
Yeah.
Russia.
Crazy.
And that was my first experience. I was like, well, while I'm there, I'm going to go see some friends in Norway too. So I did that for a few weeks after the school quarter ended. But I've loved travel
And
ever
it's something
since
you
then.
really enjoy. I suppose you get to try lots of different food. And,
Yeah,
yeah.
it's all about the food.
What about airplane rides and stuff? Does that bother you or not so
Doesn't
much?
bother me. I mean, I can't sleep sitting up, so
Mm-hmm.
if I'm gonna try to get rest on the plane, I gotta take drugs for it.
What's your rule about people that put the seat back in somebody else's face? What's your thoughts?
I can be one of
You
those.
do that sometimes.
But I do it slowly. I don't just like slam it back.
You just like move it a little bit, let them get used to it a little bit more.
You gotta be a little conscientious of that. But
Yeah, yeah. I was gonna say there's certain people that have that's like a pet peeve or like
yeah.
everybody's got little pet peeves about stuff.
I mean, I don't want to be mean and like hit someone. But
Right, just slam the seat back in their face.
yeah,
Yeah.
it's not good.
But yeah, airplanes, yeah, they're kind of fun. Like I don't mind doing it. But yeah, travel's got to be fun.
I do love flying. I mean, I think flying's fun, but just because I know that I'm excited that I'm going somewhere, not because I
Right,
really
not
wanna
like
be
sitting
on
in
the
a tiny
plane.
little seat that's like the
No.
size of a bus is actually fun. But
No.
it's just like the excitement of going somewhere, right?
Yeah.
Like usually you get to watch like a movie or something. That's
Yeah.
not too bad.
Yep.
So what TV shows do you like?
Right now we're watching For All Mankind.
Never heard
And
of
that
it.
is Apple TV Plus.
Right.
It's basically the space race
Ooh.
as if it had changed and not gone the way that it actually has gone, and as if it's continued on. So
Yeah, because it's kind of just like stagnant.
stalled a little
Yeah.
bit, but yeah, no, this is right now we're in with the Russians and the Americans, and the Russians had taken over the Americans mining on the moon, and so the
Whoa.
Americans actually went to the moon with weapons and just kind of pushed them out.
Is there any aliens? No.
Not yet.
No. Do you believe in them?
I don't know.
Yeah.
I mean, the odds are with like I don't know how many billions of planets out there.
Right.
Shouldn't there be at least
There's
one
gotta be
with
something.
somebody else out there?
Oh, 100%.
I don't know.
I even think there's probably like regular ways that things probably happen. Like
Do you think they're visiting us and we just don't know it because we can't sense them?
it could be because like we don't even know if like they're definitely doing like new research, and I think it's a thing in science where like there's different camps that believe it or don't believe it, but it's like getting away from the Einstein stuff. So like believing that that's kind of limited and that there is probably a way to travel outside of space-time in general, and that space-time is kind of only real and relative to us because we're in it, and the possibility that maybe it's not as real as we think it is. So the idea is if somebody could move outside of that, they could probably travel like crazy, because they're finding that out where like there's those two particles like in quantum entanglement, I think they call it. And I don't know, man. I feel like it's going to be wild in the next like 10 or 20 years. Like who knows what we're going to get to see in our lifetime.
Man, think of how much has changed just in the last 40 years.
Right. I mean, a lot of stuff.
Kids these days don't even understand a world without the internet.
I thought about that too. It is so weird because like we're probably similar in age and we're probably like around the last group that kind of remembered like calling your friend's house like, hey, is Stevie there? Like you had to
Mm-hmm.
call their home phone.
Mm-hmm.
And then like just the idea of like you just didn't like know what was going on all the time. You couldn't just check in on everything like.
Mm-hmm.
And it is so weird to think that like people have no idea what that was like. They have no
Mm-hmm.
reference, no frame of reference. So I think it's weird that you're born into a world that is completely gone
Mm-hmm.
now. The world, like, and so we really have no way to comprehend like what a young person thinks right now, or like their view of the world. Kind of like we
No, it's
kind of
so
get it because
different.
we're like we've been along for the ride. But if you think about how different just that fact was, like that you didn't just constantly have all this information at your fingertips
Mm-hmm.
and that you kind of like if you wanted to like watch something you'd like see what was being presented to you like on TV and it was only from certain limited number of sources so like
Mm-hmm.
everybody that was in the country and kind of around the world actually kind of like had a similar reality or view of
Mm-hmm.
reality as everybody else because there was only this one thing being like projected out kind of from like the few channels that were on and news
Mm-hmm.
and media sources so like we all kind of lived in this more shared reality somewhat and now it's like there is I mean we have shared realities but like there's like multiple
Yeah.
realities like so many different people like if me and you are the fan of the same like internet thing on YouTube we live in that reality but like there's it's I don't know it's wild
Mm-hmm.
it is so wild what do you think about all that like social media
Man,
and
social media, I think, was initially fun for me because
yeah
it was a way to kind of see who's doing what and what's going on in everyone's lives. And I do feel like in the last few years, it's really gotten toxic.
yeah
And I saw this movie on Netflix,
oh I remember that
The
yeah
Social Dilemma.
yeah
And the next day, I was like, I am done with Facebook.
it is wild like in that how like it's attention is the thing people are after
Yes. It's
so
been
it's like
commercialized and monetized. And
yeah, all our data, all of our
yeah.
attention. Like if I was talking to you on like Instagram Messenger about something, I would probably get an ad the next day. Like, hey, I really need a new toaster oven. Like,
Mm-hmm.
I need a air fryer. I'm sure I'd get a bunch of air fryer ads that would pop up the next day.
Well, haven't you seen or heard or whatever, something like you're just talking and your phone might be listening.
Oh,
And then the
even if you're
next
just
day,
talking,
yeah. And then the next day, there it is on your Facebook or Instagram.
I think I remember that. Yeah, like I had that where I was like, oh, I need a new mattress or something, and then
Yeah.
like it said it. I didn't even type it. I was
Yeah.
saying it to a friend, and yeah, the next day there was all these like ads for mattresses and stuff on my. It's wild.
They're listening.
Well, they're listening to everything. I mean, but so like in your business though, it's probably a necessary evil. You have to
It
be out on
is.
social media,
It
right?
is. Yeah. Yeah.
But like personal life, do you just kind of try to stay away from it now,
Man,
or
I'm so not on it. And
yeah,
I do feel like I'm I don't know, more happy,
right?
less stressed, less I don't know. I didn't really notice that I was stressed, but I'm content not being
Well,
there.
there's and that's the thing. Like in your line of work too, is like there's the thing about like it's like constant comparison.
Mm-hmm.
So like Instagram is like full of just like beautiful people.
Mm-hmm.
And so I understand that it's like it can like I mean I don't think we should ban like beautiful people from
Mm-mm.
sharing photos of
No.
themselves or anything. I don't
No.
know what the right answer is, but like
Yeah.
it is that comparison where it's like then you're trying to compete on there like
Yeah.
it's human nature. So it is weird. I don't know. I don't know what it's going to be like in another 10 years.
Yeah. A lot of the issues that we face as plastic surgeons do stem from social media because, a lot of it isn't even real. There's filters and there's
Hmm.
ways to kind of alter the photo so that it doesn't actually portray reality, but people
Right.
want the fake look
Yeah.
because it looks better than reality. And I can't necessarily deliver that, nor do I want to.
I do think we used to like view beauty in a more realistic way. Like it's like yeah, it's like almost like
There's trends.
unreal now.
There's
Like
trends.
um that's one thing I'm grateful for being the age I am is like kind of remembering that time before
Mm-hmm.
social media
Mm-hmm.
so that I don't really take it that serious. Like I participate in it, trust me. Like I
Mm-hmm.
am trying to get my social media big. I want it to. I want to the podcast to grow. I want my fitness Instagram
Sure.
to grow. I want all the opportunities that can
Yeah,
come with that. I view
yeah.
it as a way to make money.
Same.
But it's like, I'm so thankful that I'm from a time where I realize that like none of it really matters. It's not real. It's not really real. It's like clearly people are putting out the best version of themselves or the version they want you to see or the. And so like I don't take it that serious. Like I take it serious in a sense of like I'm trying to grow it because I look at it as a business. But I don't. But I think kids don't know how to do that, and that's kind of scary. Like to them, it's like the end of the world. Like and people, I mean, they commit suicide over it and stuff. It's wild.
That's what's sad is they have a harder. I think they do have a harder time determining, deciphering what's real and what's fake, and what they really should get worked up over and not.
Yeah,
And that's tough.
that's got to be tough. Have you do you like to read any books or anything?
I do. I'm reading a book right now called Complications.
Yeah,
And
what's
it's,
that about?
Doctors and their complications.
That's about doctors.
We all have them.
Yeah.
And it's a nonfiction book, so it's not a novel, but it's written by a doctor who wrote it during his residency training. And, how do we deal with complications? Because
What does it mean,
bad
complications?
things
Like,
I mean anything other than the perfect result.
okay, so there was complications with your surgery. That's
Complications
kind of
with
like
surgery. I mean.
so like that's the thing. Like you'll hear it in a TV show or something when they're trying to be dramatic. It's like,
Yeah.
well, we're sorry to tell you that there were some complications with
Right.
your surgery. So that's what it's
Yeah.
okay. That's what the
Yeah.
reference is. Dang. So do you have any favorite like medical TV shows or series that like what are any that's like the closest to reality?
Closest to reality, I think.
Probably not
most
Nip
of
Tuck,
us-
yeah.
No, Nip Tuck. Most of us in the field would say, and I've heard a lot of my friends say this, Scrubs.
Scrubs is so funny.
So much realistic as far as like what we go through and the
Right.
things we see and do and say,
Okay.
our interactions. It's
Yeah, because
true.
of the banter between the friends and like
I mean, it's comedic, but it's more real than, Grey's Anatomy or ER, because
those are so dramatic.
I'll watch some of those shows. I'll be like, that's not what we do. That
Right.
would never happen in real life,
Right. Wow.
Meredith Grey's doing brain surgery on an airplane that's crashing. I mean, what?
I don't know. I can't.
What?
I can't handle that show, dude.
Yeah.
Like a lot of people like it. I understand. But like, is there any of the shows that like that have like the most realistic looking surgery or like? I was gonna say Nip Tuck did have some pretty crazy looking. Like they would show some of the surgeries on it. That was kind of one of the things that made the show cool to watch. Like they'd show some of this stuff.
You see it happening.
Yeah.
I mean, I gotta say, some of the stuff that I do see when I watch some of these shows. I mean, I haven't seen Grey's Anatomy in a few months, but some of the things that they show, it's like,
Yeah.
okay, that's kind of how it looks.
Right. Oh,
Not
that's so
necessarily
wild.
how we do it, but under those
They're at least trying to kind
Yeah.
of get it right. Yeah.
I mean, it's one of those things. Well, there's an earthquake and a fire, and there's someone, an active gun.
Someone's holding up the ambulance.
Yeah,
or like,
but we're gonna continue doing this. Okay, well, that's not quite real, but
I wonder. Yeah, those shows always are like.
the drama has to be on steroids.
It's like the power's out. There's a giant storm. Some guy has a gun, and he's here to like get revenge on someone.
and one of the surgeons.
But
has to
this person's gonna
collapse.
die if we don't get a generator in here,
Yeah.
and I have to finish this surgery. Like,
Yeah.
wow, yeah. So that back to that book, that complications. What's that like? What makes that so interesting? Is it just like?
It's something that we all have to deal with because humans aren't perfect, and the patient's body isn't perfect. That's why they're here. I'm not perfect because I'm human, and we make mistakes. We forget things. We make the wrong decisions. Medications, or the nurse meant to get this one and she gave that one. I mean, there's things that happen, and it's like, how do you deal with?
So it's knowing how to fix them
How do you
kind
deal
of in
with
real
that?
time, or like deal with it.
At that, but it's like, how do we acknowledge that we're not perfect and we're kind of held to a high standard? Like, you've been through all this training. You should know better. You should have read the
Oh.
label. You know how to like mix it and draw it up and inject it. And, it's like, I do. I don't know what I was. Stuff happens.
I have like so much respect for doctors, but also I realize like I think people do this weird thing with certain professions where they like they forget that you guys are still human beings
Mm-hmm.
or like human. So like, cause there's there can be bad doctors. You know what I'm
That's
saying?
true.
Like there
That's
can
true.
be, but so you put the name doctor in front of something, and it's like sometimes people just treat that as like. That's why like sometimes I'm always telling people like get a second opinion or
Mm-hmm.
get like you always should. There's so many times I heard where like kind of like that thing with your back you were talking about.
Mm-hmm.
Like imagine if you would have just found the right doctor right away and they would have figured that out. Like
Yeah.
so it's like I always tell people like don't lose hope right away or don't think it's the end of the world. Like there's always these stories where you hear like they had to find the right doctor that oh actually this is what's going on, and it's
Mm-hmm.
not like even the other doctors might not have even been bad doctors. Like you said, you're just human. They just didn't, they were going with what the best case of what they thought, and but they just missed something or they didn't have the knowledge that this other doctor, it was a new procedure or
Mm-hmm.
something. So it's like it is weird, we really put you guys on a pedestal. Does that pressure like get to you ever?
It can when there's hey, I did everything that I thought was the right thing to do. Every move I'm rethinking like how did this come from what I did? I've done this before. Why is it so, and it could be the patient's anatomy. It could be the patient's genetics. Let's blame the patient, for some of this too because we just don't know.
Right.
And
So then you have to
you
kind of
know,
reverse engineer and try to figure out what's different this time or like,
yeah.
and then after a while does that kind of just give you a bigger knowledge base every time you make a mistake? It almost
That's
kind
why
of,
it's called a practice.
yeah,
That right there is why it's called a practice because we are constantly learning from
yeah,
the last thing that I just did, even if it's just interacting with the patient.
right,
You know, like sometimes people, best case scenario, they remember 10% of what we tell them.
uh-huh.
That's kind of what we tell each other. And if they only remember 10% and you expect them to remember 100%, they're going to go home and forget all this other stuff. So it's like, how well did I communicate? And
Oh, so
how could I
communication is
how
huge.
could I improve upon that? Just the interaction with the patient and making
Hmm.
sure that they're doing the right stuff at home.
And that's a big part of your job too, right?
Yeah,
Like just relationship with patients and
it
everything.
is. I mean, you want to build trust and respect, but you also want to have, a good relationship with this person. And, sometimes it's a challenge just number one, them communicating with me and me communicating with them and
Right.
making sure that we're talking the same language.
And so every time you get better and better at it. Every time you make a mistake, you learn.
Yep.
Yeah. Um,
And if you don't, well,
you're not a great
you're probably
doctor.
not so good of a doctor.
Right, right.
Because every great doctor is going to make mistakes, whether they're big or small, but you learn every single time.
Yeah, you have to, right? I mean,
Yeah.
any kind of business, you have to, and you have to get better. And I mean, even in life, that's how you learn.
Mm-hmm.
Um, so I was gonna say, like, if there's anybody listening now that was interested in having anything done, like, what can they do, or where can they go to like find your? It's Refine MD.
Refine MD NW for
Yes.
Northwest.com. So
Right.
Refine MD Northwest is the name of the business.
And you guys have the two locations,
Yeah.
one in Kirkland, one in Bellevue.
One in Bellevue.
Um, and then I was gonna say, do you have any like, what's your plans? Like, do you have any like travel plans coming up or anything fun or?
Well, the wedding is in Thailand, so my sister's going to get married in July in Thailand. I've never been there,
Yeah,
so I'm planning on going at least to there and maybe to Tokyo or Singapore or something like that.
Tokyo would
while
be
I'm over there.
cool.
I know.
Um, yeah. So like Thailand, I've had some friends go there because of Muay Thai.
Oh,
So like that's their practice is Muay Thai. So that's the martial art that they like. So
okay.
like, that's the birthplace of Muay Thai, obviously.
Yeah.
And they said it's crazy when you go there because like the Muay Thai fighters over there, it's like they start when they're kids,
Hmm.
and it's just like such a part of their life, like
Wow.
this martial art. So it's kind of like a religious experience for them almost. Being if you're that into Muay Thai and you go to Thailand and you
I could see that.
kind of see like the home of this thing that you love, this martial art that you love.
Yeah.
So I bet that'll be a cool experience, like
Well, the food is going to be the religious experience for me.
right, because you're like a foodie, huh?
I'm a foodie.
I'm a foodie too. It's like actually a lot of bodybuilders are foodies, so
Yeah.
which is funny because we don't really get to eat that often.
Yeah.
But but then it's usually like you'll get one cheat meal a week or like I don't know. But it's a thing that's weird. A lot of bodybuilders are foodies. It's just kind of how it is.
That's how you look like you do, and then there's me. I get one cheat meal a day.
What do you do? What do you do for do you do a lot of physical activity to stay in shape?
Not a ton. I mean, seriously.
I mean, your job has to be somewhat physical.
A little bit, but I mean, when you're standing in the OR and you're looking at things and just kind of doing little things with your hands, I mean, it's not a ton of calories.
Right.
So you do have to get out there and walk the dogs and go for a jog, go for a bike ride. I like bike rides.
Is that what you do? So bike riding, walking.
Yeah.
You kind of like to watch what you eat, like.
To some degree, I eat fairly clean and unprocessed.
Right. I think that's huge for health.
Doesn't mean I don't eat cheese and drink some wine.
I was going to say you like wine, cheese, charcuterie.
A little ice cream maybe too.
What's the best ice cream place?
Oh man, Molly Moon's.
I've heard of that. Is that
Molly
gluten-free?
Moon's? No, they have some gluten-free stuff too, but that's a local.
Somebody else told me Molly Moon's too. So like after my bodybuilding show, I'm gonna go out for one day of eating.
Full day.
A full day.
Do you want me to help you plan this day?
I mean, maybe. Yeah. So like my friend Tyler is kind of a foodie, and he's a dude that works for the Washington Brewers Guild, and he has like a permed mullet, mind you. So like.
I did that.
Did you have a mullet?
Oh yeah.
No way.
Oh come on. Growing up in Snohomish, that was
That was the thing. Mullet.
You did
perm.
that back in the '80s. Absolutely, you had to perm it.
I was gonna say, I think when I was a little kid, they did that to me.
Yeah.
Like it was like you'd have it grown out in the back, and they would perm it.
Yep.
And then for a while there was like a tail.
Yep.
Like my mom, and then you would bleach the tail.
Bleach the tail.
And then like I'd say around the 2000s, like the Backstreet Boys stuff came in, and then that's when everybody would like do the pull it through a cap and highlights. Remember that stuff? Like that early
Oh yeah.
Oh yeah, dude. That was like. But so my friend with this mullet, and I told him he needs to get it highlighted too. I'm like, you gotta get the highlights in that thing, perm the mullet, then some highlight. But he's kind of a foodie, so he's planning this day. So my plan is like, after the bodybuilding show, a lot of guys go out that night and eat, and I probably will too. And then the next day, and then I'm gonna just get right back on my meal plan the following Monday. So that's the key. Is like you don't want to, because I've heard stories where dudes will like gain like 20, 30 pounds in the first week after their show because they just go crazy.
Oh, I'm sure
because they've been so restricted for so long. So what's some of your favorite foods if you're like foodie, like sushi?
I gotta just boil it down to quality.
So good quality food.
Quality, I mean, a good burger can be amazing.
I love burger and sweet potato fries.
You can go to like McDonald's and Burger King and those kind of. That's what I grew up with, and that was like a treat for us.
Yeah, we used to love it when I was a kid.
I'm older now, and
it's not quality. It tastes like shit.
It's not the quality, yeah. So I'll go to Lunchbox Laboratory for a good burger, or
I actually like that. Was it Tipsy Cow?
Tipsy Cow.
They do really have good burgers, and like shakes, fries, all
good
that stuff. Wings,
good stuff. But good sushi, absolutely. I feel like that's really healthy. I mean, you can get such good fish.
It's so
super
healthy.
Fresh. And I'm really excited to hopefully go to Tokyo and experience it there.
Can you imagine eating sushi in Tokyo? God, that's going to be awesome.
I know.
Well, that's going to be dope to hear.
Yeah.
Well, thank you for coming on. I think
my pleasure.
Yeah, we can wrap this up. That was a really interesting to hear how you got into this, because it's not how many plastic surgeons are there in the world? Probably a lot, but it's not a very.
I don't know how many there are, but there's, It's
a rare thing, right?
It is a rare thing, and as far as like surgical specialties, there's a reasonable amount of us, but there's more general surgeons and orthopedic surgeons and that kind of thing.
But so anybody that if you're looking to get in, try to make yourself, look better, become more aesthetic. If there's something that's been bothering you, go check out Refine MD Northwest and see Dr. Bryan McIntosh, and I really appreciate you being on the show, man. That was fun.
I'm glad I was here. This is great.
It's a good time.
For inviting me.
Yes, thank you, and we will see everybody next time.
All right.
And thank you guys all for listening.